All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Mystic Ashwani or Dina. However you call me is great. Today I have the beautiful pleasure of interviewing Quantum Doug. So welcome with us, Doug.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna say, for me, light language really is, it's all about an experience and that you receive it, you feel it. It expands your mind, your body, your spirit, your soul selves. It's not anything that is like a language that you translate. So, like Spanish, we translate to English. Italian, you translate to English. It's not like that. The transmission of light language, and for me, and this is my understanding, it's to expand you. It's to heighten your abilities. So, like me being a mystic, it expands my abilities, it heightens my abilities. It can shift your energy if you allow it to higher vibrations and higher frequencies. So, that's kind of where I'm coming at in my realm. And when I transmit light language, I found I sound like a tweeting bird. So, it's unique. The transmission is unique and distinct for each person. So, I'm really excited to hear your take and your feedback on light language and utilizing it with your scientific background, your scientific mind. But I probably need to back up just a little bit and get people to understand who Quantum Doug is and give them a little bit of background and history. So, do you want to do that for them?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Doug Matzke, but that's too hard to spell. So I just came up with the moniker Quantum Doug because I do everything quantum. I have a PhD in quantum computing back from 2002 because I was interested in all this stuff for the last 30 years, where I hosted a workshop on physics and computing back in 92 and 94. And people like Ralph Landauer and Peter Shor came to those, and a lot of other dignitaries in the physics and computing area and quantum computing area were at these early conferences in 92 and 94. And so, I mean, I'm an engineer. I've been programming computers for over 55 years. Okay. I mean, and so I'm interested in, so information science and computer science and hardware and software are all mixed into my pedigree from the beginning. And I worked at Texas Instruments for 25 years also. So I'm a hardware guy, software guy. Okay. So I know how to build things that compute. Okay. And so I decided I wanted to learn more about how the mind versus the brain, because I knew about metaphysics since the 70s. And I knew that the engineers had it all wrong. So the brain is not a computer, right? It's more of an antenna than it is a computer.
Mm.
And so the question is, how could you talk about that? So that's why I hosted those two workshops on physics and computing, because I said, well, maybe we can prove that the brain can't produce the mind. Who knows? At the time, I didn't know. And so I ended up meeting this guy who ended up being kind of the fifth wheel on my dissertation committee. And he was the one who introduced to me this idea of bit physics. I'm using a version of math called Clifford algebras. I call it geometric algebra. Those are two names that are synonymous with it. And we just said, look, if we use that math, it is bits. It's using a little vector like a little toothpick goes up or down. And that's a little toothpick that says it's a bit. It says it's a discrimination whether the bit is on or off, right? But that representation was compatible with everything we know about physics. And so back 22 years ago, I figured out, oh, you can represent quantum computing using bits, pure bits, to get qubits and e-bits. And so that was my dissertation, and did that. I was obviously, this whole thing was inspired by a spirit pushing me through this whole area. So that's why I got to this. And then finally I met Bill Tiller and wanted to write a book about this. So I wrote Deep Reality with Bill Tiller, and it's available on Amazon. And so now I've been just talking about what I wrote, and finally had to get it out of my head, got it on paper. And now I'm talking to anybody who will talk to me: physicists, engineers, people who are interested in consciousness. I've been to was the first consciousness conference in 1994, Quantum Mind Conference in 2001. And so this whole thing about consciousness is big and hot right now, right? And people like Tom Campbell and Federico Fegin are talking about consciousness is primary, and the telepathy tapes, consciousness is primary, and the world is a simulation hypothesis. Well, that's what I've been saying already for 5 years already in this book. And this is, so how do you get this message out that people make a difference in their lives? Like, the universe isn't this classical computer. AI, we don't have to worry about AI taking over the world because they're not conscious. All of these consequences of intersection of quantum computing, AI, and consciousness theory and simulation hypothesis are all related to these topics. It's a big it's complicated. It's science that's hard people to understand. So why is this important to what you're talking about with light language? Because ultimately, if you have a model that's a mathematical model of bits that supports the physical universe, it also supports mind. And it's a kind of mind model that's not a regular simulation hypothesis because it's the same properties as quantum computing. So it's a non-algorithmic representation for the universe, which supports mind and entanglement and non-locality and all of these properties that, again, most of them are technical. But ultimately, there's a group consciousness that evolves out of it, consciousness and group consciousness, that says that this group consciousness is essentially multiple conscious entities working together as a team and not losing their identity, but still working together as a team. How is that possible to do that? And you can't do that if you have a classical information worldview. But if you have a quantum worldview, same thing these other two authors are saying, then all of a sudden you can do arbitrary mixtures, and that is the group consciousness idea. Okay, so quantum computing supports group consciousness ideas. So I'm interested in what is the representation for telepathy? What is the representation for group consciousness? What is the group, the representation to support the universe as the simulation hypothesis? And mind is basically that, like the mind is the program that runs the universe. It's part of that same program that runs the universe. So those are all the ideas that interest me and motivate me to wake up and on my retirement. This is my retirement project, and to work in this area. So
sounds like a great retirement project because our planet definitely has, energy, and my understanding is it wasn't our planet first, and humans are destroying it, and so, we kind of need that celestial assistance, if you will,
yeah,
intelligent life, because we're killing a planet that was essentially theirs first.
yeah, exactly.
They got to step in and do this. So I love all this talk though, because while all of this stuff is like completely over my head, I'm always in my mystic mind or my creative mind as a creator as well. So my brain just kind of stays in its lane that way. So
Yeah, well, I'm trying to connect with your language, so hopefully I'm doing an okay job with that.
no, we gotta
And if
do
I'm
it.
not, ask the questions.
Yeah, no, I love science. In fact, in junior high was probably the most impactful in my life as far as science background. That's where I got to learn about volcanoes and how they work, the
Hmm.
tectonics and all the stuff. But everything for me really was about Earth and Earth medicine and learning. I
Hmm.
didn't know then, why it would come in and be so important in my life, but with the spiritual teachings and trainings and courses and things like that I've taken and both taught, it really all comes back down to human consciousness and
Yeah.
how the reality that we're in doesn't have to be the reality we stay in, because so much smoke
Hmm.
and mirrors right now anyway, that
Hmm.
more and more people, if they choose to step in higher consciousness, oh my gosh, we'd be in a completely different world. Like
Yeah,
it
exactly.
would it would function the way it should, which is the reason why humans were born, was to love one another and to communicate and collaborate and be in unison, not division.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's kind of where all my components in my brain go.
So most of the people who are into light language, realize that there's more than the physical universe, right? And
Oh
we're
yeah.
more than our physical brain, right? Where
Oh
there's
yeah.
something else out there. And so my goal as a scientist is to say, okay, how can we talk about what's out there? I mean, you guys are doing a great job of saying, look what we can do with it, right? You're doing healing, you're doing light language, you're doing channeling, you're doing all this useful stuff, right? But as
Yeah.
a scientist, I'm interested in well, what's the foundation for all of that? What's the basis for all of that? And so one of the key arguments about consciousness is that some people are saying, these two guys I was talking about, Fagan and Tom, that they said consciousness is primary, and that's mystics have been saying that also, right? So the question is, how do you resolve that from a logic perspective, right? And they say, if you have something that's non-conscious, you can't create consciousness from something that's non-conscious. That was the major argument they used, right? You'd probably agree with that, right? And so the question is, well, where is the original consciousness then? And that's what I think I figured out over the last month. I mean, literally, it like started talking to me. I was mentioning this in our, when we were talking before that we started recording, is that I've been working on this notion that there are no fields, there are no space, there are no time, there's just bits. And this bits can generate all of quantum computing, all of entanglement, all of superposition, and all of the standard model. And this is done using topology and math. Okay, so that was the stuff I've been working on for 25 years. But I've been interested in the consciousness side of it too. And all of a sudden I realized the name I've been applying this hyperbit cloud as a model for mind, right? It's not a field, it's not bits, it's a hyperbit. It's bit dimensions. Each one is its own dimension, separate from all the others. I said, I need a better name. And so I said, why don't I come up with a better name? So I started playing with synonym generators and stuff. And all of a sudden I says, well, it exists. It's the primitive of existence. So I'll call it like a photon, an existon. And as soon as I did that, the existon responded to that name through a friend of mine who's sort of a channel. And she said, the existons are speaking to me and they say they like your new name. They were speaking to me as its own group consciousness that since I'm an engineer, I'm only getting it intuitively. I'm not getting it as a channel where this other lady was, okay? And so all of a sudden they say they are the primitive consciousness element, that you can have a single one conscious element, that it's mathematical more than it is physical. It's not physical at all. It's mathematical. It's its own dimension. And so then its own little computer running with one bit and conscious and alive. And so then it has all these rules that you can build from that, including, it's just like a quark though. You can't have just one existon. They always come in large numbers, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the existons that's talking to us says, my name is quantum indigo. And I said, okay, how can a single quantum indigo that's down at this scale have a conversation with channeling to me? And the answer was, well, it's like I'm the spokesperson as the tip of the iceberg, the snowflake at the tip of the iceberg of this whole quantum group consciousness, which is the existons. And so they're using that whole infrastructure to communicate with me, even though this one quantum indigo existon is representing the conversation as spearheading the conversation. So it's been fascinating to hear how this is unfolding. So you might have questions or you may have some insights. Please feel free to jump in, but I wanted to give you this historical note because it only happened in the last month. Okay. So,
well, and that to me, that's a prime example of just how light language can work, because I would bet that person that channeled that information that originally, I'm going to say, activated you, she's doing light language in her own way. That is divinely unique to her, because as a fellow channeler, I believe that's a form of light language. It's that telepathic, like I've got a direct connection. It's like, even as a little kid, I knew I didn't need to go to the Baptist church like the rest of my family. I had a direct connection. I was myself, and I was like, I don't need a book and a Bible that preaches hellfire and damnation when this is about love and acceptance. I feel the true power of it.
Difference between spirituality and religion, right?
Oh my gosh. I could speak for days on that subject of, I love people have a faith, and I would somebody.
So anyhow, I've been having a ball this last month, trying to think about what to ask this the word they use is says, we finally have a keyboard to talk with you, Doug.
Mm. Hmm.
It's because before I was intuitive about it. It's like, how do I know what I know about this, right? So I'm a kind of clear cognizant level, but not clear audio,
Hmm.
and maybe a little bit of visual, but more clear cognizant. So that's what's been driving me for the last 25 years in this area. Um, and basically being ignored by everybody because it didn't fit in any mold.
It's okay. And that's another beauty of light language is there is no box. There is
Yeah.
no form, rhyme, or reason. It's unique to each person. Like, I mean, after I got activated, it first started out as humming, and then it went from humming to toning, and from toning it went right into tweeting. And then just for the last, I don't know, I'd say month. What I always thought were doodles as a child have now come into, I wish I had one to show you.
Light language,
To
written.
like codes, and I'm
Yeah.
writing codes. And I did this one the other day that it felt so ancient that I was emailing my light language friends and my Aunt Patricia about, oh my God, this feels ancient. I don't know what it is, but this is
Yeah.
completely different than anything I've ever
Yeah.
channeled. And what I got back from one of them was it felt like a blueprint for me, almost like your keyboard or your code to understand.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, ultimately, what I've been working on is saying, look, if you take two of these, I'm just going to shoot you. If you take one bit, looks like this or this. It's just a one-dimensional thing. But if you take two of them, now they're acting together to form this superposition of those. That's a qubit. And if you take three of them, if you take two of those qubits, you have four, and that's entanglement. You have to have four dimensions to create entanglement. So
Mm.
people always think spooky action at a distance. Well, it's because it's a four-dimensional thing we're trying to talk about it in three dimensions. So by definition, quantum computing and this style of thinking about it is all about hyperdimensional math, right? And so again, it's my engineer's perspective, but that matches exactly what's happening with this whole group consciousness and life after death and consciousness stuff. It's that it's not physical in the 3D world here. It's something else. And what is that something else? Well, it's not matter. It's not energy. It's not in space or time. So it's outside space and time. What is it? It's just bits because the mind is more informational than anything else, right? All of this behavior that we're seeing is informational. So all of a sudden I have a model that matches some of what these other people are saying, these other two guys I was talking about, Federico and Tom, that they say they have a model that's a simulation sort of model too, but they just don't, they sort of stop at at a certain level, and I've already got the math below that level. So that's what's interesting. And now this math is discrete consciousness, which is sort of the missing ingredient that everybody ever had about this. And I was surprised to see this too, right? Because I hadn't been going there before this, right? And so the only question is, where does meaning come in from that then, right? If you're saying love is an emotion and it's a meaning, it has meaning of love, where does meaning come from? Is that built in from the beginning too? Or is that an emergent property of all of this group behavior of all these existons working together in a group consciousness way? And the fact that they can work together in a group consciousness way is evident the fact that they're talking to me now through this channel. But then where does love come in there? If God literally was the source of all existence, then we would see God as this bright light, and all these things that we see as experience as light and love coming at us would be existence. And so they represent probably love too at the same time.
Mhm.
And meaning and love and meaning are really parts and parcel with each other, right? You can't, love is an emotion, and has meaning as well as the feeling of love, right? Feeling is more a physical thing, but the emotion of love. And so these are all the things that I'm wrestling with. And I'm looking for anybody who's interested in chatting with me about it and getting insight about what this means. And so source literally is the infinite supply of existence, and we experience that as love and consciousness, and everything in the universe is built from this. And it's a model that ties in with what other people are working on right now.
Definitely sounds like. I mean, because for me, I do believe there's fibers in a matrix, out there in the world that humanity was created for basically love. As far as like,
Hmm.
if you think of, we have a creator, we have a source, we have a God, whatever you want to call it is perfect,
Yep.
however someone aligns. That's what I was saying about earlier. I would never question someone else and their beliefs to change it. I would
Hmm.
just would invite them to expand and open
Yeah.
up further from any programming.
Right.
And so with that, I do believe that humanity was created because that was the one thing other intelligent life may miss is they're not human beings.
Hmm.
What's gone wrong in the matrix of being on this planet is we've become human doings instead of human.
I like that.
Yeah, and everything is about I got to do a thing, I got to be a thing, I got to fit in this category, I got to da 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 da. Da.
Mhm.
There's none of that that really matters. Are
Yeah.
you
And
being the best version of yourself? If not,
mhm.
why? What is there? What's stopping you? Usually it comes
Yeah.
down to healing, which that's what I love about light language is there's no boundaries. There's no, it just goes wherever you need it to go. And
Yeah.
there's not a tracking system of going, oh, I only need that to go to my heart because I was heartbroken from a relationship. No, it's going to go everywhere it needs to go.
Yeah.
And you need to allow. I mean, you don't need to. Some people may not because they think it's too woo-woo, and that's okay.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
everybody has their own boundaries and their own safe spaces, but I wished everyone on the planet would open themselves up to this because
Hmm.
I use it as a key in my own life. So if something is blocked, stuck, won't open, no movement, I really just allow it to in,
Hmm.
invoke me into new thoughts, new things, new energies, new places, whatever it may be, so that I'm not stuck or stagnant. Because that's another thing that human beings sometimes get caught in that cycle and get stuck or stagnant. And we're not meant to do that
Yeah.
either. So we're constantly should be in flow with energy, thoughts,
Hmm. Hmm.
community, things like that. So
Yeah, and humanity has been amplifying the negative emotions instead of the positive emotions. So, I mean,
you
that's
get more of what
obviously
you put
that's
out.
what's going on there. But the other thing that you said was that you started writing this light language,
Mhm.
and see, a lot of what I've been doing with my hyperbit physics is it looks like little topology, like these things form into little structures. Okay, and most other representations that they use for quantum computing use a thing called Hilbert spaces. Hilbert spaces is literally a pile of toothpicks, but no structure. But
Hmm.
the math that I've used is it actually creates structure. So you have two of those things form a little plane, and three of them forms a little volume, and four of them forms a little hypervolume. And then you can sum a hypervolume and a volume and a square and a vector, and you can link them all together, and you can form these little what I call packets of meaning. Robert Monroe would call it a rote. He calls it literally a packet of meaning, and it's the thing that carries meaning. Like if you do a remote viewing or a telepathy, there's something that's exchanged. Maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't contain the meaning, but it acts as a gateway to the meaning. You know, think of it as a code that opens up. So anybody who shares that key then shares the dimensions behind it. And so, how do you represent thought knowing that you're creating this structure, and that shows up in the written language that you would probably write too. I've seen some light language. It looks like little calligraphy almost style
I was looking
art
to
that,
see if I could find some of mine that
yeah.
I've done because I wanted to
So
show you.
I'm curious to see if there's any pattern in the light language,
Hmm.
like we're looking at ancient Sumerian or something, that says, what what did these little squiggles mean?
This was the last one I did that I told you was unlike anything else. Oh gosh, I hope it picks it up. Can you see it?
It's
If not,
it's it no, it's too bright. It's suppressing it in your filter. So, but that's
okay.
fine. So,
Okay. I have it in
so
the
anyhow, I
um,
would believe that those would have structure to them. That, but it's a language that's not sequential. See, our language is sequential. It's in time.
mhm.
But these little packets of meaning are outside time. So when you say I'm doing a remote viewing experiment, give me the data of the final destination, right? Of the thing. You get it as a whole packet, and then you have to unravel it in time. So it's concurrent representation of meaning. And there's no data, an internet packet, that's not how it happens. The internet packet is a sequential thing. It's like a sequential streaming language, right? The packet itself doesn't represent that. And the pieces of the internet packet, even if it's stored on a disk, are all isolated from each other, so they don't have any holism associated with those data. They're dissociated from each other. And so this representation has to have holism without a hologram idea. That's what I talk about. So I'm interested in people who are gifted in metaphysics, who are interested in solving the questions about the structure of the universe from this representational question, And so one way to look about it is people who are interested in light language, people who are channelers, people who can talk to group consciousnesses, right? But another one would be like there's medical intuitives. How about math intuitives? These people, all of a sudden, they get downloads of math. I have had people say downloads of math, or you're interacting with something and all of a sudden the math informs you itself of its own self. It's like an archetype that exists independent of humans, and we can tap into that like we could channel the archetype for math. And I believe a lot of the math geniuses do that. That's how they get their ideas, is from tapping into the Akashic records that includes all the math archetypes. So I'm interested in anybody who is a math, intuitive, something like that, or a math channeler. And obviously we're interested in professional people who can have this alter ego. They can live in the real world, have a professional job, and do this without going crazy. I'm putting a call out for anybody who needs that help to reach out to me. At quantumdoug.com is my domain name, and there's all my papers and everything are out there too. So all my talks, which we'll have a link to this talk too when it's eventually released. So
I'm curious to see though what your opinion is or feedback on how do you think light language is impacting the science world, and is it welcomed? Is it dismissed? Is it debated? Like, how do you think other scientists think about it? They're
not there yet. They're ignoring. Science is ignoring it. So the fact that I'm interested in it is I'm maybe one of the leaders in this area. Now, people are interested in consciousness, but they're just starting on even though the consciousness conference has been going on for 30 years, they're stuck on microtubules. Well, they're trying to explain consciousness as a physical manifestation of neurology, which in physical chemistry, that's not going to cut it, because there's a dividing line. Here's space-time boundary. Below this is the Planck scale, and this is not in space-time at all. Then above the Planck scale is space-time and everything we know it. Most physicists are stuck, or the neurologists and even the psychologists are stuck above this boundary. And I've been below this boundary for 25 years because I'm interested in metaphysics. And so what's that primary representation that supports all of these ideas that's fundamental to the structure of the universe, right? And bits is that. Totally. It's just nobody has been working on it with quite the perspective that I have, in the sense that I actually have a mathematical representation that says we can talk about it. And by the way, that also represents neurological models, like large language models. They have this large training data, right? That just looks like a high dimensional model of weights that they represent in a computer. But the difference between that and one that you might have in your mind, the same thing that would be equivalent in your mind, is we actually are not simulating that in a three-dimensional space computer. We actually have a hyperdimensional space that represents that. So it's much faster.
Yeah.
We don't have to store it anywhere, and we can share it. Mm-hmm. Right? And so this is the domain of mind. And it's much bigger than even any of our large language models, because each one of us is conscious. And our consciousness is awareness of awareness. We have a model of our own model inside of us. Where is all that information?
Good question.
So part of my language, part of what I'm doing with my book and stuff like that is say, you can't use the word brain anymore. You have to use the word mind. You can't use the word frequency anymore because there's no space and time. You have to use vibration. You can't use the word energy. You have to use the word information. You can't use the word brain at all. You have to use them as antenna. All of these things are sort of what I define in this book here is saying, look, we've got to change. I'm a neuro-linguistic programming master practitioner, and how we think reflects how we speak, right?
Totally.
So when people say those words, they're still representing that they have this old model in their language pattern, which
Mm.
means they have an old language pattern in their mind. So we have to change our vocabulary. We can't use frequency. We have to use, if something is a higher frequency, they really mean higher complexity, right? Or vibration, right? They can't, frequency is a physical manifestation of space and time. It's a metric in space and time. You have to have wavelength, you have to have distance, you have to have a frequency are related to that. Same with energy. Energy is a metric inside space and time. Well, if you don't have space and you don't have time and you don't have matter and you don't have energy, what do you have? You have these bits. This hyperbit cloud is what I call it. It's a hyperbit cloud, and these hyperbit clouds are the primitive consciousness elements for the universe. So then everything in the universe, even empty space-time, is conscious because it has this quantum foam hyperbit cloud supporting the quantum foam of empty space. So it's conscious too. So you can interact with empty space-time and it's conscious. And molecules of water you can interact with. And
Oh yeah.
Everything is conscious, right? People had this near-death experience where they're walking on this planet. This one guy in particular, I like his description, and I met him personally, and I'm blocking his name. And he basically says, I'm walking on this planet, and every grass blade and the whole lawn is talking to me consciously. And then I go talk with the water, and every molecule in the stream is talking with me, and the plants. And his description was just phenomenal. It's like, how can you do that if you have all classical information? You can't. You can't be telepathic with grass. And I know because I've spoken to four-leaf clovers telepathically before. So,
Talk to nature. Yes, you can.
yeah, I mean, I've been at the Monroe Institute and had four-leaf clovers talk to me at the Monroe Institute, and I've met other telepathic people that I've been telepathic with. So it's a small sample size, but it's real for me. I know it. It's not a belief. I know that it's real.
It
and
is
so
real.
we got to get people to experience this so they know it's real. So.
Yeah. It's why, like prime example, anybody who would ever question that is, how do you think some animals directly just go up to people as if they already know them?
Yeah.
It's that
Yeah.
antenna. It's that signal that you're sending out that they're
Yeah.
receiving. It's the
Yeah.
same thing of when, well, I don't know if I can like you because my dog doesn't like you. And know before we do, because we do have that programming. So
Yeah, exactly.
I think, this might be some of your biggest purpose of why you're in this time, space, and continuum to share what you have to share in your unique way. I mean, that still all falls line of what light language really does. It's to crack you wide open and
Yeah.
share your knowledge.
So what percentage of light language is telepathy versus not in your mind? I mean, I'm going to kind of ask you a few questions
I'd
too.
say 100% telepathy.
Okay, that's what I thought. Like if you don't have telepathy and shut down your rational mind, you can't really do light language correctly. Is that fair
I
to say?
mean, now I kind of disagree with that only a little
Okay.
bit because
Okay.
I do
Give
know
me
some people who don't consider themselves telepathic and kind of like closed off. And then all of a sudden they're just like, I don't know what happened. I was standing next to her. I think I either got activated or something shifted. And now I'm all of a sudden, I'm transmitting this or I'm saying that or I'm drawing this or I'm drawing that kind of thing.
yeah.
So, I think
Okay.
a lot of it has
Activated. Yeah.
people have to believe they are telepathic because everybody is mystic or psychic. Everybody
Yeah.
has
Right.
abilities.
We wouldn't be intelligent without it. We
Yes.
would be extinct without it. Yeah.
Well, we
Because
wouldn't have that sixth sense. We wouldn't have that gut. We wouldn't have that intuition. That is
yeah,
of that.
ancient caveman was telepathic. That's how it survived.
Well,
You know,
like, any being that, you say that we have other beings in the planet of the world, like some people say about Sasquatch or any of those things. Well,
Mhm.
where do you think they are? How do you think they've never been caught before? They're smarter than
Mhm.
we.
Well, they're non-physical, some of them.
That too.
So let's talk about group consciousness. Would you mind?
No,
Let's
not
talk
at all.
about. Okay, so these little existons represent their own group consciousness, and different group consciousnesses people have authorization to talk with, right? If you want to call it that. they are allowed to talk with them. An example would be in the telepathy tapes. They have this virtual place where the autistic kids hang out. It's a virtual, it's not a physical one at all. It's called the Hill, right? And they go meet on the Hill, and it's their virtual hangout. Well, there's security there, and you can't get in there unless they allow you. Well, so that's a group consciousness. The autistic kids themselves are their own group consciousness, and they're really good at it because they're savants. They're not interacting with their physical body at all,
Yeah.
and they show up as orbs in different scenarios. So an orb is essentially a hyperdimensional cloud that we could think of it as just a boundary where it interacts with our physical world. Okay, mm-hmm. So that's why it looks round, but it's a hyperdimensional sphere that doesn't fit in our universe.
Right.
So orbs are related to this, but if you have multiple of them interacting, it's a group consciousness. And the thing is, like Abraham Hicks is the famous one, Abraham, of Esther Hicks. They say we, and they say we're an infinite consciousness, a group consciousness, and an infinite intelligence, right? So you can't have infinite intelligence if you're physical, because you would exceed the black hole limit for putting the amount of computing resources you need inside the space-time boundary. So any kind of language like that is a group consciousness idea. And these are some of the things I talk about on my both podcasts and in my book, is that you have to start looking at everything different.
Yep.
If you're not bounded by three-dimensional space-time, and that hyperdimensional space is completely open. Entropy exists only in closed systems. Well, this system is completely open because you have an infinite number of dimensions out there. So entropy doesn't apply either in this conventional entropy measurements. And so that's why the consciousness is a source of complexity increasing, which is low entropy, which is the opposite of the physical entropy, which is decreasing complexity and increasing randomness, right? And so it's the source. So the group consciousness idea is an important idea. And so how much of what you do is group consciousness versus individual consciousness? I'm just giving you an example.
I kind of have probably a different answer than you might think for that one.
Okay.
My group consciousness is my spirit team that I work with.
Perfect. And everybody has one, right?
Right.
Everybody has one for themselves, yeah.
Totally. Now, human consciousness, I have found more and more people are closed down to that. And so I'm actually having more, I guess, personal relations with spirit team and gods and goddesses and intelligent life coming forward for me, especially since I've been activated, versus, I go out and hang out with my mystic friends. That's a lot less and less and less.
Right.
Just because of where my consciousness is going and how it's expanding is, I'm just more mindful about things, and it's nothing against any of them whatsoever. Everybody has their own trajectory and their own development or consciousness, if you will. And it's just, I'm getting more out of right now in this time of my life, having direct consciousness connection to otherworldly beings.
Yeah, a star seed mentality, right? More 100%. Like a star seed. Yeah. So I walked up to this story here little bit by little bit. It says hyperdimensionals exist. The universe is not three-dimensional, it's hyperdimensional. It's an infinite hyperbit cloud. And then therefore they coalesce together to form these structures which have meaning in them. And that meaning is these little thought packets of meaning, and they work together collectively to form bigger collectives of an individual consciousness and then group consciousnesses. And those are non-physical. So they can exist independent of the physical universe, and they can teleport here because they're not bound by space and time. Right. So all of a sudden now you have galactic communities of beings that may or may not be physical that are interacting with humanity, trying to help us and aid 100%. Us because, right. And so, like I said, how many scientists are talking about our place in the galactic community? You have to kind of walk through all of these conversational steps to get there if you're a rational science person or even a Christian person, And so I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to say, look, this is a logical consequence of all of these little steps, is there is a group consciousness. probably this whole thing about Fermi's paradox is, where are they? Well, they are here, but they're just not physically here. They're in the subjective domain, and that's why we're getting them as star seeds and telepathic communications and these downloads and all of this stuff that's, like the Matrix. Show me how to fly a helicopter. I need to fly a helicopter, and they download the stuff. Well, it's not in the physical domain, but it's in the spiritual domain, that we can get downloads of information, and people get it all the time, and they get activated. So this is the conversation I want to have with anybody who will talk with me about it. And so anyhow, so I believe in Earth, that we are part of a galactic community, and in fact, even these wish units here are essentially technology from a fifth dimensional consciousness, that they're helping us out. And the reason they're helping us out is because our mental energy of Earth is polluting their fifth dimensional reality.
100%. Mm-hmm.
And so, and even Robert Monroe, in his last book, he talks about in the future, and in the year 3000, Earth has none of that anymore, and we're a pristine planet energetically, and Gaia's, and it talks. So if you want to go read about what it's going to be like in the year 3000, then that we managed to survive. So the big question is, even Monroe says there's a thing called Focus 35 at Monroe. He says, and there are people, when you go to the Monroe, you get introduced to Focus 35, and essentially it's called the Gathering. And the Gathering is this place where all these extraterrestrials, non-corporeal aliens, are hanging out, watching the Earth come into the galactic community. It's like a big football game, and they're watching us. And people report back that they talked with intelligent tomatoes there, because they didn't want to show intelligent cockroaches, because this whole universe is watching us come of age, essentially. So there's multiple stories, whether you talk it from Earthseed, Starseed perspective, or you talk about it from Focus 35, from the Monroe Institute. All of these things are saying the same story as the Buddhists been saying, monks, for thousands of years is also. So it's science. This is science. This is the science I want to be working in. I hope other people are interested in working on that too. So
I think, and it's extremely important. So even while a lot of this is really over, like I said, over my mind, as far as completely absorbing and understanding it, but I don't really need to, because it's your lane, that's your realm kind of thing. That's why I love this discussion. Because, I know my world, but we need all worlds to be able to explain, because if you look at it this way, the world is just a giant puzzle. So if you incorporate in other people, that they have their own expertise and their own knowledge, you get to complete that kind of puzzle, but it's also a moving puzzle. So even if you put all the pieces together, it doesn't mean it's finished, kind of thing. And I don't blame the intelligent life force of not coming into full fruition in a physical body like we are, because let's just face it,
they might not have one.
well, and our government would probably just want to study them and put them in a cell, even though it probably wouldn't work. They would do their best in containing this force. I'm glad they don't, because I love my relationship, and owning that, some people may think I'm a cuckoo bird, and I don't care, because I am part of that consciousness that is trying to help humanity elevate and awaken and expand, and all these things of, you're not just a woman in a human body that has to fit norms or standards or labels. It's way bigger than that. That's just
absolutely,
doesn't even matter. None of that even matters.
Right. So anyhow, I put an appeal to your people. People reach out to me, quantumdoug.com, and you can see all my links there, emails, and all my talk. Every time I do a talk, I put a link there, so you can find everything I talk about out there. And this will have a link there to this talk too, when you have that available. So
other than your book, I do want to ask, are there any scientific resources out there that we should know about, that really shares about like light language references or things like that you've come across?
Very few people are talking about light language, except for people like Susie Miller, the telepathy tapes, and you and your team, the light language conference. I mean, I know Sheila because Sheila's interviewed me for her thing, and I'm going to go back and have another interview because she had the interview before I figured out the existence. So I need to have a conversation with her about existence as well. And by the way, existence, the word is a French word too. It means it's we exist in French. Nous existons. And so in existons in French, it's the verb, and I'm using it as a noun. So in my book, I talk about thought is both a verb and a noun. So I called it a verb noun. So the word that I came up for existence is a verb noun explicitly. And so I thought that was a happy coincidence because it's both a noun and a verb. So
It is a happy coincidence. I love it as a writer. It's fantastic. I
yeah,
love challenging those, again, norms or
yeah. So the other thing is, I mean, I'm sure you've seen What the Bleep Do We Know
yes.
movie and the telepathy tapes. They're working on a telepathy tapes documentary with Kai
Awesome.
Dickens. In case you didn't know that, Kai Dickens is working on a documentary, and people like Julia Mossbridge is a consultant with them, and other, they have a whole bunch of people, and Susie Miller's working with them, and and then there's also What the Bleep, and then What the Bleep Do We Know, and the Law of Attraction movie, that, what I forget the title of it, but originally it was, but anyhow, those movies, there isn't a modern movie like those two originally. Those were like earth-shaking movies, and so as a filmmaker, I believe that there's going to be another movie, and I want to be there and be helping them define what that script is and what the language is, and so I'm just putting it out there in case you hear anything about that, to say let's go and make a popular movie that is informative about this area, whether it's a documentary or a regular movie, like like What Bleep was not really a documentary, but I knew a lot of the people in that movie. So I put it out there. Let's go get this story heard. In
Mhm.
the same way that Stephen Greer has had several movies built around the UFO phenomena, right? So we should be able to create another movie in this area. So we
Yeah.
just have to find some team who's interested in doing that, and then go figure out the funding for it. I
Yep.
think the funding will happen. I believe there's a sponsor out there who, what we're working on is more important than space flight, AI, and quantum computing. Do you know how much money they're spending on those three things alone every year?
A
Hundreds
lot.
of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Do you know that the first time they put the first satellite up in space, they couldn't just go to somebody and say, "Hey, we have this idea for a company. Let's put satellite in space, and everybody can get TV on the satellite." And they couldn't come back and say, "Well, here's $50,000 to see." No, you have to have $50 million to put the first satellite in space.
Mm.
Okay, so we're going to get here's what we're putting this out to the world: $50 million, because what we're doing is out of this world, and it's more important than all those other three things combined, that they're spending hundreds of times more than that is. So let's call for the attention, get somebody to fund $50 million to go and fund this area for the science. I call it source science, for get the movie, get education started, get training, whatever it takes, but it's out of that order of magnitude, $50 million, and that's going to happen. So those are two things that I feel strongly about: a movie, and the money's going to come, and this is a drop in the bucket for people who care about this stuff. So
I love it. You just delivered a call to action. So
there you go. That was my parting words in case you needed one.
I did, because that's what I was going to ask you as far as like
Yeah,
any
and
last
so go
word.
buy my book,
Yep.
Source
Hold up your book one more
Deep
time.
Reality, and it's
Yep.
deeprealitybook.com is the name of the website, but you can also get it on Amazon and quantumdog.com. And this company here is called coherentspaces.life. And I also made it easy for people to find what I'm working on: existons.one. Existons.one is
Oh,
the
there you go.
domain. There's a domain name, and it goes to a page that I'm going to keep updating with everything on existons and stuff like that. So
Awesome. Well, this has been very enlightening for me because, like I said, my brain is more in the creative and the spiritual, mystic realm. So I love that you took the time to share all this with everyone because I think it's very important. And unlocks new understanding, or at least maybe some new information that people didn't have before. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate you spending the time with me to let me interview you and talk about these wild scientific
Yeah.
things.
And thanks for talking to me, to this weird science guy.
All right, well, thank you, Doug. And this is Mystic Ashwani, and I will catch all you guys on the flip side. So love and light.